Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Monday through Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 a.m. Pacific. Ray Flowers breaks it all down for you from a fantasy sports perspective. Hey there, everyone. Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Hope you're doing well here on this Thursday. The second Thursday of the 2025 NFL football season. One of the final, there are two more Thursdays after this for baseball for the regular season there. Hot and heavy here. Lots going on in the world of sports. Hopefully lots of good things going on in your world, wherever it might be and whatever might be going on. Again, I'm Ray Flowers. You can find me here Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Justin Fenchman is here on Wednesdays. So yesterday I was with Jeff Mans on the Elite Sports Show. So hopefully you listen to us for about an hour each day here at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And then you head over to SiriusXM to listen to the Elite Sports Show with Jeff Mans. That's 2 to 5, Monday through Friday. Again, I'm there Wednesdays. Follow me on Twitter, X, Threads, Instagram, Blue Sky, at The Ray Flowers. You can hit me up in Discord over at FantasyGuru.com, answering baseball questions, football questions all the time. Got a whole slew of questions that have been sent to me the last, 12 hours or so. So I'll get to those here when the show is over. Thanks for joining us. By the way, we have a special announcement coming next Monday. Can't say it yet because it's got to be till Monday next week, but it's a special announcement. It's pretty exciting. If you're looking to save a little bit of money, we might be able to help you out. So stay tuned. Come back on Monday for that little bit of news. What are we talking about on the show today? Well, let's throw it up on the screen. As we've talked about, it is football season now, but we're still not abandoning baseball. It's been my pledge since this show began. What is this, episode 484? Almost at 500 episodes of this thing. Since we started the show, my pledge was always we would never abandon baseball until the season was over. We're not going to abandon here. So on, on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays with me, we'll be talking baseball. It's a Thursday, talking baseball for about the first 25 minutes here. Some young players to talk about. These are some players I think, obviously Langeliers and Kurtz are on every, roster, and Paul Skenes and Perez. Cristopher Sanchez. Some of these guys going up, some going down, some young players, some old players, just kind of, some guys that are in the news now and kind of looking at things down the stretch. We'll get into that in a little bit here in a second. And about 25 minutes from now, we'll talk to Tyler Buecher. We'll have a discussion with him about the Commanders-Packers game tonight. He comes on every Thursday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And when he's on the show, we'll talk Thursday Night Football. He'll give a free bet over at FantasyGuru.com. So he'll give a free bet that, you can sign up for the product there. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Get the seasonal product, the DFS product, the wagering product. Get access to the Discord rooms. Get access to the live streams, to any podcasts that we do, to all the articles, to all the rankings, to all the hosts, the experts at FantasyGuru.com. So click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. I did find it very interesting. Someone on social media a couple days ago said, the morning show is getting really like an advertisement for the website. I don't think I've done one bit more advertising at any point. I think I've basically done the same, 3-4 minutes every show. We got a new product. I obviously talk about that, but, I'm very confused by that. If you watch TV, there's commercials. If you watch YouTube video, there's commercials. We do an hour here for free. We talk about the website for 4 minutes. Really? You watch a TV show, you get 15 minutes of commercials. You get 4 minutes here? And I do cool things like do these hand motions and change my voice. So hopefully you don't all feel like that. Again, this is a free product. Obviously, we're trying to get you over to FantasyGuru.com. It'd be beneficial for us, for you to be at FantasyGuru.com. It'd be beneficial for you because you get more advice over at FantasyGuru.com. But I did find that interesting. Yeah, we're advertising too much on a free show where we give 55 minutes of advice every day. Anyway, Tyler Buecher will also join us. We'll talk about the evolving situation with the Niners and especially Brock Purdy, Evan Engram, Juwan Johnson, and Harold Fannin. Tyler's a big fan of Harold Fannin. We'll talk about that. We'll see why here in a few minutes. Jaylen Waddle, Michael Pittman. What is going on with the Packers wide receivers leading into that Thursday night football discussion? I already see some comments popping in here in the chat room. Remember, if you're watching or listening in 3 different places, youtube.com/@ElitePlusNetwork, facebook.com/FantasyGuruHQ, Twitter X @FantasyGuruSite. Any of those 3 places you can watch live or on demand. But if you're watching live, you can ask questions or leave comments. I'm so confused. You can interact with me or Justin or our guest throughout the show. You can also go to fantasyguru.com, click the Elite Plus tab at that top toolbar at the page there. You click on that. It'll bring up the Elite Sports Network. It includes Man's podcast, Benjamin's podcast, Armando's podcast, and this show. Or you can just type in Fantasy Sports Daily to where you watch podcasts or listen to podcasts, excuse me. I'm getting all messed up this morning. Maybe I should have had that Mai Tai last night. I don't know. Anyway, by the way, I'm happy to be here today. This is my time for jury duty. Where is my jury duty summons here? In California, I don't know where it is like in every state, but in California, you get put on the list. You call the night before, 6 o'clock. You call, hey, and they say, put your jury number in, blah, blah, blah. Then they tell you whether you need to report in the morning or not. I'm obviously not having to report in the morning, so there's a chance there would have been no show today. So luckily, I'm here, so we're having the show. I have to call back at 11:15 today to find out if I've been considered served because I was technically on jury duty waiting, or if I have to report to the court. So fingers crossed that I don't get called so I can be here tomorrow. We'll see. But we dodged the first bullet. We'll see if we can dodge that second bullet. Ethan B says, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you too, Ethan. It's 9 o'clock here, but good afternoon to you if it's at 12:07 wherever you are. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate that. I got a baseball question from him. Which streamer do you feel most confident in today? As I talk about all the time, Ethan, I start my baseball analysis before the show. I actually finish it after the show. So doing it live here, it's really, really difficult to do. It's not something I'm fully prepped for. Unfortunately, I'm not like some people that just do baseball. I do baseball and football. So not very easy for me to do that in the morning time, especially because, like I said, I legitimately start work at 7 in the morning. It's only 9 o'clock here on the West Coast. Seymour, Povich, Oveda, and Vasquez. Oof, rough groove here. Let me pull up some data here as we're talking, see if I can get a quick answer here to this. This is also another challenge of hosting as an individual. Instead of having a host that can, vamp for me a little bit while I'm doing some research, I got to do both. Looking at the matchups today, let's see. Seymour's got the White Sox. Let's go there. Povich against Pittsburgh is also another good one. Oviedo against Baltimore is not a bad matchup, but I don't trust Johan Oviedo. Vasquez, Colorado, So it's between Povich and Seymour. Let's go with Seymour. The White Sox are obviously a pretty dumpy team. Seymour, who we talked about on the show previously, he does have the ability to miss bats. He's been a little bit wonky the last couple of times out, allowing basically a run an inning. But that's just a matchup that's not enviable at all from an offensive perspective. We know that the White Sox are a team that doesn't necessarily bring it. Pulling the numbers up here as we're talking there too as well. Have been a little bit better here of late. No doubt about that. Top 10 in WOBA the last week. But if you look at their ability to have success against left-handed pitching on the season, let's pull that information up. We have to start going down the list. They're 15th in WOBA. So I'll go Seymour. Tough call, though. Angela says he's starting Oviedo for what it's worth. And I am feeling better. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Ethan. Thank you so much. And Angela says Weathers is back. I hope my Josh Bell and Dalen Lyle hit 4 home runs against him. Well, Josh Bell's got 13 RBIs in 3 games, which I think is a Commanders record. Not Commanders, Nationals record, excuse me. So Josh Bell, hey, for those people looking for a corner infield, Josh Bell right now is swinging a hot bat. All right, let's talk a little bit more baseball here before we talk football in about 20 minutes. Parker Meadows, who we've talked about a lot here on the show, who I'm a fan of, who I own in my Dynasty League, who's been in and out of the lineup, who is in theory a potential leadoff guy who can go 2020. We know this. Practically speaking, it's been a disastrous season. Good news. He's just been recalled from the minor leagues after spending some time on the sidelines with an injury. He's now 6 for 13 with 2 home runs, 6 RBIs, 3 walks, and no strikeouts. Let's go. He's going to play center field for the Tigers whenever he's healthy, which he is right now, against right-handed pitching. He's not going to face lefties. So anytime the Tigers are facing a lefty, it's one of those scenarios where he's on the bench. So he's kind of the Tigers version of Brandon Marsh, that kind of a guy, right? And again, he's 6 for 13 with a couple home runs, 6 RBIs, and no strikeouts in those 13 at-bats. So he is absolutely somebody that if you need that metaphorical boost, that you're looking, for some outfield help down the stretch, a guy with that power speed, Parker Meadows profiles there. Can he keep this hot stretch going? And it's only 13 at bat or 16 plate appearances, so it's kind of, but no strikeouts. Really love that, as we talk about all the time. That approach, long term, is something we really like. Dylan Beavers of the Orioles, and we'll talk more about Paul Skenes in a few minutes, who was the opponent last night before getting to the bullpen. The Orioles won the game-winning hit in the 10th inning by Dylan Beavers, who went 2 for 3 with the double. Let's check in on Beavers, who, is as we talked about when he was promoted, a solid prospect. A solid prospect who was fantastic down on the farm this season. So many things gone wrong with the Orioles. He's one of the few things that's gone right this year. And, he's making a case to be part of this organization's starting outfield next year. It's 20 games, 76 plate appearances, so limited work here. And if you look at his splits, he's batting 91 against lefties and 15 plate appearances. So, hey, Parker Meadows. It's their version of that, right? And the Orioles, we know, are comfortable with this type of right-handed batter or left-handed batter against right-handed pitching because they have used Ryan O'Hearn before they traded him to the Padres in this exact fashion. So Beavers is making a case to play every day next year against right-handed pitching. Again, done absolutely nothing against left-handed pitching at all. But even with those terrible numbers, his OPS overall is 894, and he's got a 453 on base percentage. Like, this is some excellent work from the young player. 1 home run, 1 steal in 20 games is disappointing. That really doesn't work, Ryan. It's disappointing. But 21% walk rate and that 453 on base percentage, that's special. The batted ball data, 10% barrel rate, really nice. So he squared a few balls up here. 33% hard hit rate, 87 mile an hour extra velocity is very disappointing. You technically want 50 batted ball events before you really start looking at that. He's at 39. Okay. Bottom line is, overall, this has been good. This has not been a start where he's looked overmatched whatsoever. The approach, this is great. So he is endearing himself to me as a potential late round option next year for the Orioles, and he is somebody right now that against those right-handed pitchers is absolutely usable. He's flaming hot right now with those numbers. Speaking of hot, we talked yesterday about cold, or Tuesday about cold, excuse me, Jack Caglione of the Royals, and I think that if you looked at, Caglione, let's actually pull that up. Let's pull up MLB pipeline as we talk here. If you look at, I'm going to say that Caglione and Kurtz were basically at the start of the season the same guy in the prospect rankings. Can I get that information here? 2024. Let's see. I can't because they've already adjusted for 2025. I'm going to say, without having the numbers present, I don't have enough time to look this up, that Caglione and Kurtz were basically ranked as the same guy. I think that's pretty fair. The results this season have obviously been anything but. Caglione, we talked about earlier this week, has been terrible, and Nick Kurtz has been spectacular. He hit his 30th home run last night. 427 plate appearances. Like, this is a damn near 50 home run pace. And everyone's all excited about Kyle Schwarber and the numbers and all. And duh. Kyle Schwarber's got a chance. He's going to be top 3 in MVP vote, right? Right? Kyle Schwarber has got an OPS of 929. Kurtz is at 1,023. So this is just another example. And, like I said, prospect reports, expectation-wise, everyone knows Caglione and Kurtz will both perform. There's no doubt about that. But look at how disastrous one guy's first season was and how amazing the other's first season was. And this is the struggle that we have every single year with rookies in baseball in particular, is that we all love to play this game. I rostered Jordan Lawler in the 27th round of drafts, right? How has that gone this year? Horrible. Jordan Lawler could make the Hall of Fame. He could be a fantasy superstar for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, going 30-30 every year. This year, absolute horridness. So this is why it is so difficult. I was having a discussion with Rob Povia about the pitching side of things too. It's, I think, more difficult now than ever before. We have more information now than we ever did for baseball, right? We've got StatCast and all this data. We've got Driveline. We've got all these superb analysts, superb analysts. Some focus on hitting, some just on pitching, et cetera, et cetera. And despite all that information, it's never been more difficult to determine who's going to break out and who isn't. All these guys are physically gifted. All these guys are technically ready to succeed. And, very difficult as an analyst to try to figure this out. And I just, we'll talk about this again next year. And I'm sure some of you are hearing what I'm saying and you're like, yeah, Ray, I get it. Yeah, I get it. Other ones are listening to what I'm saying and say, I don't care, Ray, I'm still drafting all these rookies because, that's what the ADP says. That's what people do. I know that. It's just so damn difficult. The one negative with Kurtz And you have to look really hard for a negative here. Really hard. 30% strikeout rate. And I will say what I've said previously. It's damn near impossible with a capital I to bat 302 as he currently is with a 30% strikeout rate. It's almost impossible. Keep that in mind with Nick Kurtz. All right. As Ethan says, that's what Dynasty is for. Correct. And there are Dynasty Baseball leagues, right? Some of you are playing in Dynasty Baseball leagues. Exactly. John says Bader's on a heater. He is. We talked about him a couple of weeks ago, picking him up off Fab, and boy, is he killing it. He's on. He'll probably get hurt at some point. I said it. I jinxed him. But he's been absolutely fantastic. John G said, some smarty pants I follow knew Lodolo was going to break out. Yeah, I will say this. This is a moment of bragging before I get back to reality of me making bad calls. I've had pretty extreme levels of success for those of you that haven't subscribed at any point over the last 10 years with my work. I've had a pretty damn good run of breakout pitcher of the year stuff. And the criteria on that has changed over the years, and I always write it out and make it very. It used to be outside like the top 250 in ADP, then it was top 225, then it was top 200 because the analysis keeps getting better every year industry wide. So these guys that should be an ADP of 280, their ADP is now 176. Done a pretty good job with that. I'm very proud of that because that is something that I've done a good job. Other people write articles, which top 25 hitter is going to be top 5. Well, how about which pitcher at 75 is going to be pitcher 30? Something like that. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate it, John. Going back to the Athletics, Terry Steinbach hit 35 home runs a couple years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, whatever it was. God, I remember that too. I'm so old. Second athletic catcher ever to hit 30 home runs, Shea Langeliers. He joined Nick Kurtz. Now, Shea Langeliers, he hit 29 home runs last year. He's up to 30 this year. And this is really impressive. Some of this is the ballpark, Sutter Health Ballpark versus the Coliseum. There's no doubt that some of the A's offensive numbers and the production is ballpark related. That's got to be mentioned. It also has to be pointed out that Langeliers has done an excellent job. We're talking about strike zone control with Kurtz and how a 30% strikeout rate is scary bad. Listen to the numbers for Langeliers: 35%, 29%, 27%, 19%. It's 19% this year. He's shown excellent growth in the ability to make contact. And obviously his power, which is elite for a catcher, has shown through because, simply put, he's putting more balls in play. This is not overly complicated, right? It's his home run to fly ball ratio last year was 19%. This year it's 20%. It's the same thing. Why does he have a career high in home runs? Why does he have a career high in home runs despite having 50 fewer at bats than last year? Because he's hitting the ball more. He's putting the ball in play. It's a pretty simple game at the baseline. The bottom line, though, Langeliers is hitting 266, and that's the real key with him. Is he going to be a 220 hitter moving forward, which is who he was the first 3 years, or is he going to be a 250 hitter? That's a significant difference at the catcher spot, right? I think there's a chance for him to be a 250 hitter with this new approach. So we'll have to dive into this deeper in the offseason and hope he doesn't have a tailspin here down the final month of the season, anything like that. But right now, really impressive with Shea Langeliers. Xavier Edwards went 3 for 5 with the home run. Yeah, we don't pick up Edwards for the steal, right? And Edwards, who was fantastic last season, especially down the stretch, has been very average this season. We're looking at his numbers here. 1 steal, he gets to 25. 8 runs scored, he gets to 80. He's hitting 280. These are pretty good numbers. But last year he stole 31 bases in 70 games. This year he's at 24 in 127 games. He's kind of the Luis Arias zone of, this is a player that does a couple of things really well, does a couple of things really poorly. And if the things he does really well, stealing bases, he's just okay at, where's the value? If Luis Arias is hitting 307, great. If he's hitting 282, if Xavier Edwards is stealing 42 bases, great. If he's stealing 25 bases, So, remember that it's always difficult, especially and I talk about this a lot, when you look at a player rater and it says this guy's ranked here, this guy's ahead of here, all that kind of stuff. Understand the way those work. They're just, working on the numbers, right? And, maybe, a guy like Edwards is very much like a Billy Hamilton type of player that, if he's stealing all these bases, he's going to finish a lot higher in the player rater than you think. Is this the type of player that you want on your team, though, if he's got 3 home runs and 39 RBIs? So, overall, I would say that his season's been fine. Unfortunately, this style of offense, a season of fine doesn't work. So he's been a disappointment in the fantasy space. Against right-handed pitching, I mean, he's been really good. He's hitting 296 with a 354 on base percentage, just hasn't hit lefties. So disappointing season for him. He'll be somebody we can get on the cheap next year, and there's always the potential for him to hit 300 and still 40 bases. Something to keep in mind. Some pitchers before we talk some football with Tyler Buecher here in about 10 minutes. Eury Perez, who we talked about, I think, on the show the other day. I know I talked about in Discord. We've talked about a lot recently here. 7 strikeouts, gave up 3 runs against the Nationals. No decision yesterday. He was effective. Faces the Rockies at Coors Field next. Can't do that. He's been okay. And we talked about the slowdown in the second half. And, I would encourage people, because this question's come up an awful lot in Discord, people looking to stream, especially here the last couple weeks in the baseball season. You can't just look at the last 4 or 5 outings. You can't, but you really need to heavily look at the last 4 or 5 outings with a lot of these pitchers. Factor in who the opponents are, factor in the home road stuff, the health of the opponents, all that kind of stuff. But you have to lean a little bit more heavily on that than you would if it was, let's say, June, right? Because, some of these guys are trending in the right direction. They've located their curveball or their controls improved. Other guys are wearing down. They're struggling. They're starting to leave the ball up in the zone. They're starting to give up, harder hit balls. So focusing on those last handful of games. And when you look at the last, 5 starts of Perez, I'm not even looking at the numbers. I just know from prior to this effort. So can't start him in Colorado. We'll see how many starts they let him make if they let him finish out the year. Again, a building block for next season was kind of the goal. His 1-1 whip is great. The ERA is not good. Overall, it's been a strong season because he's been healthy for the most part. And that's really what we needed to see with Perez leading into 2026. Paul Skenes, our man, Phil Backer, was at the game last night between the Orioles and the Pirates. He was all excited. Gets a chance to see Paul Skenes pitch. Paul Skenes goes out there, scoreless effort, pulled after 5 innings and 64 pitches. I understand it. The Pirates aren't going anywhere. Doesn't matter to them. 5 scoreless innings, get him out of the game. He threw 64 pitches. And you can make the argument that the number 1 pitcher in baseball is Paul Skenes, right? I'm trying to remember the numbers I saw the other day. It's got, through the first 50 starts of his career, he's got like the second lowest ERA of all time, or maybe it's the lowest ERA of all time ahead of Vita Blue or something. Like, it's crazy, right? And we know the strikeouts and the ratios. He's just fantastic. And I understand why. I mean, he's at 178 innings. And they went into the year, they probably said 175 is where we'd like to get him. He's already there. I get what they're doing. He's going to get to 190 innings. Okay. I get it. But isn't that the problem with baseball? And again, I'm not trying to bash the sport, but I'm trying to figure out, because I was having a conversation with the coworker. Interest in fantasy baseball is down everywhere. It's down in the DFS market. It's actually, I think, up in the wagering market. But it's certainly down in the DFS market, and it's absolutely without question down in the seasonal market. Absolutely without question. And part of the problem for us in the fantasy space is you're dealing with the same thing I'm dealing with in my leagues, is that, guys we're talking about, like Tyler Wells, are things now. Tyler Wells shouldn't be a thing. The Orioles' 14th starting pitcher this year, but there's so many guys hurt. There we go. We have to worry you're in head-to-head leagues. You have to worry you're trying to win in the playoffs here. Yeah, it's great that Paul Skenes did what he did last night, but if they left him in there, he had 8 strikeouts. If they let him go 7 innings last night, he might have thrown 7 shutout innings with 13 strikeouts, right? Oh my God, he would have thrown 91 pitches. The humanity. I don't know. I won't belabor the point. Speaking of Tyler Wells, again, it's the Pirates. It is what it is, right? 6 strikeouts, gave up 1 run over 6 and 2/3 innings, against the Pirates. He's set to face the White Sox next. So Wells is somebody that, as we've discussed earlier this week, I think on the show, it was either on the show or in Discord, not a bad start last night, went out and was very effective. Certainly not a bad start next time out. In his 2 outings thus far, he's given up, 1 walk and 6 hits in 11 and 2/3 innings. He does not beat himself with the walk. He also doesn't miss a lot of bats, so he pitches to a lot of contact, which is, not great in general. It's also not great. I mean, looking at these numbers right here, and again, 31 batted balls, not enough to pan. 93-mile-an-hour exit velocity, 13% barrel rate, 52% hard hit rate. Oof. Those are some bad numbers. thank the Lord that he's got a batting average involved in play 138. Not a guy that we can get excited about, not someone we should even be thinking about in a dynasty league for next season, anything like that. But for the next outing against the White Sox, okay. But remember, the numbers, again, scary numbers here through those two outings. The numbers look great on the surface, and he can work it around the zone, right? I'm leaning toward saying thumbs up to his next outing against the White Sox. Give it a go, but just pointing it out. Eduardo Rodriguez blanked the Giants for 6 1/3 innings last night. His next start is against the Giants again. Then we run into the discussion, the battle of, okay, both these hitters saw the pitcher, pitchers saw the hitters. What are the adjustments they make in the interim? Who has the edge? I tend to think the batters have the edge. That's always been my position. I don't know. I've never actually looked up there has to be studies on this. Maybe I'll look at this in the offseason. Never actually looked up studies that talk about the back-to-back start. I have to think the pitchers see the guy, they see the stuff, they see the release point. Even if the pitcher changes up the approach a little bit, I think the pitchers have a little bit of an edge. The really interesting thing with Rodriguez is he just sucks this year. And Eduardo Rodriguez, and I said this, let's look at the data. I said this back in 2019, right? When he was really good and he was at the peak of his skills. I'm like, look, he's good, but this is all he's going to be. Heading into 2021, I then started to say the following: no one would care about this guy except he has a B on his hat because he was with the Boston Red Sox. He's just been blah, Now, his last 3 starts, quality start, quality start, quality start. It's a good place to pitch in San Francisco on the road, okay, but still. Face the Red Sox, that's not an easy lineup. Face the Dodgers, that's not an easy lineup. I don't care what they're dealing with right now. So that's 3 straight games where he's given up 1 single run. So Eduardo Rodriguez, he is in play here. Absolutely in play for that next start. If you're looking for a guy to pick up right now to hold for that next start against the Giants, even though the Giants, I think, have that edge, in play. Cristopher Sanchez, I just wanted to give him a shout out. Obviously, he's not on the waiver wire in any league. So this is kind of me just talking about. But Cristopher Sanchez, there was a lot of hype around him this year. He came into the season a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, started throwing the ball harder. And I mean, wow. He's got over a strikeout an inning. He's got a 1.1 whip. He's got a 2.6 ERA. This guy hasn't only been good, and he hasn't only exceeded the elevated draft day expectations. He has crushed it. He's got a 2.5 ground ball to fly ball ratio. So he keeps the ball on the ground, which of course we love. He doesn't beat himself a lot with the walk. He just challenges batters. He just throws it up there and says, hit it, hit it, hit it. I'm trying to pull up the data here if I learned how to use a scrolling thing here. He throws, his sinker was 92 miles an hour 2 years ago. It was 94 miles an hour last year. It's 95 miles an hour this year. And he just throws it half the time. Sinker, 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 sinker. And people just beat it into the ground. He has been fantastic. And really, the only piece with him that we had any concern with was, would he be able to be durable in his transition from bullpen to starting pitching and all that kind of stuff? 180 innings last year, 180 innings this year. He is the new Logan Webb, Framber Valdez. We know how good those guys have been for years. Clay Holmes allowed 6 hits, 4 runs, 3 walks. And this is a player that is, like, unfortunately, many Mets pitchers at this point in time that aren't, 24 years old, 23 years old, 22 years old, struggling. And Holmes, it's not a surprise that Holmes is struggling. That's multiple outings in a row here where he's failed to go 5 innings. He hasn't allowed a home run in forever, but still not a bunch of strikeouts. The walks are starting to get piled up a little bit, and he's very much plateaued. And again, it's not a surprise. Over his last 8 starts, his ERA is 4.8, and his WHIP is 1.6. And of course, his strikeout's not even close to being good. It's 19% strikeout rate. So he's, the last 8 starts, month and a half here, not even been league average. And again, he's at 151 innings. He has thrown twice as many innings as a big leaguer as he's thrown in any other season in his life. And this dude's 32 years old. 32 years old. So oddly, and we're talking about Paul Skenes getting pulled at 64 pitches. We got Clay Holmes, who the Mets say, we don't give a flip that you've legitimately doubled any workload you've ever had at the big league level. They let him go. But Paul Skenes, this hulking youngster, they don't let him go. It's just weird. Anyway, Holmes cannot be started and trusted at all. So if you have him right now, it's not a mistake to consider dropping him for the next turn through the rotation. John G says, Warren Schwartz getting up 300 runs the last 5 outings. Yeah, he's been fantastic. Someone actually asked me the other day if they should start Suarez in the Discord. I was very surprised by that. Of course, they said yes. He went out and had a 12 strikeout game, I think, last time out. The Phillies, I mean, even with Zach Wheeler down, right? Like, they got some pitching, man. They're a really good baseball team. Speaking of pitching, I mean, Aroldis Chapman. Let's pull up Aroldis Chapman here. Aroldis Chapman, who, recently signed that contract extension. He got a 1-year deal at $13.3 million. I know that he's Aroldis Chapman. All that. He's got 29 saves. He's only blown 2 save opportunities. So his 29 saves, I mean, this guy the last 3 years had exactly 29 saves. He's matched it this season. He's 37 years old. He still throws a gazillion miles an hour. But look at this performance this season. Strikeout rate of 39.7%. His career mark is 40%. Just boggles the mind, really. 40% strikeout rate for his career. 39.7 this year. The difference that has changed his game this year in something that he has never done before is he doesn't walk anybody. His walk rate the last 4 seasons was never lower than 14.5%. So 4 years in a row of at least 14.5% walk rate. This year, 6.9%. 6.9%. Half of that. He'll never repeat that. No possible chance. But right now he's doing it. And here is another amazing fact before we talk some football with Tyler Buecher. He gave up a run last night, a couple of base hits. Okay, right. Bad effort here. Let me pull this up. This is astounding. I'm looking at the data here. Over his last 15 innings, Aroldis Chapman's given up 2 hits. Meaning that prior to last night, Aroldis Chapman had not given up a base hit in 14 2/3 innings. Aroldis Chapman, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic this season. Be overdrafted next year, probably, but fantastic down the stretch here in 2025. Again, I'm Ray Flowers of FantasyGuru.com. Thursdays, Fridays in particular, talking baseball the first half of the show, visiting with our football guys the second half of the show. Same thing on Tuesdays when I'm here. Justin Fensterman will chop it up, do a little football, baseball, basketball. On Mondays, we're all football here as I review all the Sunday game action. On Thursdays, we visit with Tyler Buecher. Now, Tyler Buecher does his version of My Monday because he comes on the show. On Thursdays, we break down every week the Thursday night football game. He often has a bet that he wants to share. He's nice. He's giving free bets away. Again, you can click the subscribe tab over at fantasyguru.com to get signed up for the product over there. And we also talk some news and notes because people are looking to set their lineups here. So it's Thursday. It's 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Let's bring him in. Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Tyler, how you doing? Hopefully you're feeling better. You were a little bit under the weather last week.
Yeah, back to 100%. Ready to kick some ass and talk some football today.
Look at that. Bringing the heat. I love it. Love hearing that. Again, Tyler Buecher of fantasyguru.com. You can find his work at the website. You can find him in Discord all the time. You can often find him on the live stream on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. And you actually host another live stream as well, don't you, Tyler?
Correct. Every Friday night, we host the NFL Core 4 DFS live stream where I'll have a rotating set of guests from the Fantasy Guru staff come on and talk the slate with me for the upcoming Sunday main slate for both DraftKings and FanDuel. So last week we had Jeff Manns on. Fantastic week. This week we've got DFS Marlin, our guy Mark, coming on here to tell us a little bit of his little secret sauce. He is a GPP guru, a fantastic tournament player. Very excited to pick his brains this upcoming Friday evening.
Yeah, we've had him on this show. We've talked to him on SiriusXM. Mark Hogan, I don't know. He might be one of the most successful people no one talks about. Like he's consistently winning 2, 3, 5, 10,000. Like he's really good at this stuff. So yeah, folks, tune into that on Friday with Tyler. He's a good guest too. So they'll chop it up and share some info there. Lots to talk about, obviously, after the first week of the season, Tyler. One of the more evolving stories here the last 24 hours is the situation with the 49ers. Obviously, George Kittle's been placed on the injured list, so he's out for a month. Juwan Jennings is at 100%. Looks like he's going to play, but their receiving core is already all kinds of beat up. We know that. Now it's Brock Purdy. And this turned from Brock Purdy to being a little bit beat up to maybe struggling to get out there this week to not getting out of it this week to maybe missing 2 to 5 weeks. So this is in the last 24 hours. This is there's a potential for Brock Purdy, according to reports, to miss a month. So multiple things I want to ask you about. First of all, do you hold Brock Purdy What scenario do you hold him and which don't you hold him? And how much different is the Niners offense with Mac Jones under center instead of Brock Purdy?
First question of how long do you hold Purdy? I view Purdy as a fantastic fantasy asset. This guy, since entering the league, leads the league. Number one quarterback in EPA per play ever since he took over as the starter. Fantasy-wise, he's not considered a mobile guy, but he's been top 12 in fantasy points per game every season. This guy, even with all of the shenanigans that went down last year for San Francisco, was still consistently putting up quality and dependable fantasy production. So I'm not quick to drop him when I see an outline of 2 to 4 weeks, 2 to 5 weeks. That's super vague to me. So I'm going to wait, see if we get more information. Maybe we get him on an IR slot where we don't need to even worry about potentially dropping him. For leagues that do not have IR, or if you're in a spot where you need to drop him, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. And sometimes that means cutting bait with an injured player despite them being good. It's really tough to hold on to multiple quarterbacks this early in the league whenever we've got so much turnover in terms of injuries, utilization, and usage, as we're still kind of learning how the NFL season, this particular one, is going to unfold. So I don't mind parting ways with him in leagues where you are forced to do it. I would just try to hold off. I think JJ McCarthy is a great pickup who's probably widely available in many single QB formats. And he showed us a fantastic ceiling this past outing, two passing touchdowns and 1 rushing touchdown. I think that's here to stay. Sorry, I've got shaky internet. It might be coming in and out.
It's okay. We can still hear you.
Excellent. Okay. As far as the switch to Mac Jones, we saw last year that he was still able to keep guys afloat, namely Brian Thomas Jr. I think this offense is still going to continue to run through Christian McCaffrey, who led all backs in XFP per game in week 1. Fantastic volume usage for CMC. The rushing yardage may not have been there, but the usage was everything we wanted from Christian McCaffrey. I expect him to continue to be the engine of this offense. They go and play the Saints this weekend, a defense that they can easily run against with quite a bit of volume. But I'm excited about Mac because I think he can still keep guys like Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings afloat, guys that we invested decent draft capital in, guys that I think what we saw from Brian Thomas Jr. last year could be the footprint for what we see for a guy like Ricky Pearsall this week. In fact, I'm even writing up my wide receiver DFS coach right now, and Pearsall is the guy that I'm going to put in there for that exact reason. I think there's a good chance that he continues that production we saw in week 1, and I think he's a guy that's here to stay. So I think in terms of like an overall setback, I don't know if we're going to see a massive one. Maybe it helps that Kittle's out of the picture and that we have fewer mouths to feed. I mean, Tongas isn't really a tight end that we really need to target. Shout out to him for making that hell of a touchdown grab, but
true.
It's more of a sparsely used
Most
DFS
improbable
play.
touchdown catch of the week or something like that, right?
When they say go up and get it, this man came back to the ball and went up and got it. That was one of the best catches I've seen in week 1. But yeah, that's where I am. I think the Niners do take a step backward in terms of like volume and stuff, but efficiency wise, I don't see why they take a major jump unless we see some other Mac Jones show up, which is always a concern.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. By the way, Jeff Mans basically said the same thing. Tyler just did on the show yesterday too. He's a fan. Tight end position. This is another one of those positions this week that there's a lot going on. So I want to start out with Evan Engram, who's a guy that was drafted to be a tight end 1 who's dealing with an injury, right? His injury has caused a lot of other trickle-down moves to be made. So we don't know for certain that Ingram's not going to play because of his calf injury this week. There's still a chance he could play. It seems likely he doesn't play, but who knows? So the question now becomes, under what scenario do you drop Evan Engram? If you pick up whoever you pick up off the waiver wire, is it just to cover Evan Engram? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where are we at with Evan Engram? Because, like, some people were in on Engram coming into the year. Some people were already out on him because of what happened last year. Now he's hurt again. Let's start out with Evan Engram before we get into some of the guys you might pick up to replace him.
I've enjoyed dunking on Engram his entire career. So let me just start with that, saying this dude's consistently injury prone, but when he's been out there, namely with Jacksonville, he's been able to get by via volume. Wasn't the case in New York where he didn't get that insane volume. In Denver last week, they played the Tennessee Titans. Last year, weeks 1 through 6, the Tennessee Titans had the lowest pass success rate allowed. They were a fantastic defense to start the year, and then injuries started piling up. It did not surprise me Denver-Tennessee was a low-scoring game. It did surprise me how limited Denver's offense really showed up in that matchup, though. Engram specifically, I think he's like that tight end 8 through 18 where you never really know. They're like the dime a dozen bunch, where if we've got a banged up guy, I don't mind dropping him, given that he is not going to be the Jimmy Graham of yesteryear in this Peyton offense. I just think that was kind of people wish casting, hoping that he could become a ceiling play. And maybe he does from week to week in terms of like the sporadic performance, but that's what makes him a better best ball play than a redraft starts it option. So I don't mind anybody turning to waiver wire given this injury report. Juwan Johnson, Harold Fannin, two guys that headlined my waiver column that I posted on Tuesday afternoon. I think both those guys are very strong replacements and guys that you can go out and grab. Let me rephrase that. Waivers have already processed. Hopefully you went out and grabbed him if you are an Engram owner, because I think you will be needing a replacement this week.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. As Ethan points out, Rattler versus Jones is going to be a primetime battle for the ages. The Niners do play the Saints this week. Juwan Johnson, you mentioned, let's talk about him a little bit. He's got a contract extension in the offseason. There have been certainly moments for him where he's had success. Had a big week one. Could have been a huge week one. That ball went off his fingertips in the end zone at the end of the game. Could have been a massive week one. Saints aren't good. They aren't going to throw the ball 46 times a week very often. Rattler at some point is going to get benched for Tyler Shuck. These things are going to happen. So how do we view Juwan Johnson, who, like you talked about, he's in your article. You know, some people were aggressively adding Juwan Johnson. They were chasing the points, thinking production. You know, to me, it's like, yeah, okay. But I hope people weren't aggressive doing it because, again, I think there's questions about this offense and the quarterback in particular.
Sure. I will say bringing in Kellen Moore is going to increase his pass rate point blank. It's also going to increase their pace of play. In neutral script last week, the Saints were number one in fastest offense in the league. So that's the Kellen Moore imprint. So seeing Spencer Rattler drop back a career high 46 attempts, maybe that's not going away. Maybe that's here to stay, especially when we consider how weak the run game was, how often this team's probably going to be trailing. It would not shock to see 40-plus attempts as Rattler does his best Joe Flacco impersonation.
But he only throws the ball 5 yards from the line of scrimmage.
Which is why a guy like Juwan Johnson was so productive last week. 11 targets, 8 catches. Like I said, he just missed that 20-yard touchdown pass off his fingertips. I will say, and there's a reason why I recommended just 3 to 5% of a bid on him. Mm-hmm. In that matchup last week, Alvin Kamara, typically a pass-heavy back, got just 2 targets. Yeah. So I think a lot of that volume that Johnson saw last week may have been scheme-related based on the opponent, and maybe we see some of that volume Johnson got oscillate back towards Kamara, who's historically been a target earner in his own right. So I think some of that volume, maybe we should expect more in the 5 to 7 target range for Juwan Johnson. Still a good ad. Like 5 to 7 targets from a tight end when you don't have Brock Bowers or George Kittle or any of those guys is still tremendous in my book. But I do think the 11 target outings are going to be more of an anomaly with Kamara biting off a bit more moving forward.
12 months ago, almost exactly. Isaiah Likely had a great week one. Mark Andrews had a terrible week one. There were legitimately people, because I saw it, that were spending 100% of their budget to pick up Isaiah Likely. People were dropping Mark Andrews. In the end, Mark Andrews scored 10, 11 touchdowns, whatever the hell he did, and Likely drifted off. 12 months later, what do we got here with the Browns? Okay, we've got David Njoku working with Flacco, who in the past has been successful. We know that Njoku basically catches 5 passes every week. Basically was that guy last week, but didn't star. Now here comes Harold Fannin. Fannin does star in week one. He is somebody that prospect-wise everyone liked. He did not play tight end exclusively last week. You know, they did move him around the formation, which is exciting. I know you're a big fan of Fannin. You were saying people get pretty aggressive here on the waiver wire. There's been a lot of back and forth about how aggressive people should have got. What are the expectations? So talk us through the whole Harold Fannin situation, and also make sure that you mention long-term here with him, because I just don't know what this offense is going to look like when Flacco's out. Like, because at some point they're going to Gabriel or Sanders. At some point, you know, Joe Flacco's not making 17 starts for the Browns this year. So how does that impact your decision with Fannin, or we'll just worry about that when it happens?
Yeah, and that's a fair point. Let's just start with Fannin being a fantastic prospect. A round 3 pick out of Bowling Green, led the FBS in total receptions, total receiving yards at the tight end position, ended his career just on a high exclamation point of a footnote. This guy came in to the Cleveland Browns organization, David Njoku. It wasn't really surprising given how often we've seen this front office invest in multiple tight ends. Harrison Brandt being like a high draft pick, a round 3 pick not too long ago. There have been a few other guys that have stood out in terms of like yards per route run. Guys that excelled at the tight end position and the college level that have been on the Browns radar. What I like about Fannin the most here is the Joe Flacco pairing. Simply, it's Flacco's been a guy over the last 3 years, since 2023, who's averaged just shy of 40 pass attempts per game across 2023 and 2024, playing for both the Browns and the Colts. For context, Joe Burrow was number 1 in pass attempts per game last year, 38.4. So getting a guy that's averaging 40 attempts per game in Flacco for as long as he's under center, this is fantasy gold. All of these guys, Njoku, Fannin, Tillman, Judy, I want access to all of these guys in both redraft and DFS while Flacco is under center. And that's a big stipulation because once Flacco's out, we're probably going to see this team revert to more rushing. Add in the context of the running back situation being murky to begin the year. Everything points towards like an investment now. So I like to view fantasy football in a week-to-week lens because that's how this game is played. I'm not spending 100% of my fab knowing that Fannin's going to be an every week starter for week 1 through 17.
Right.
What I do know is whenever Flacco's under center, I'll be confidently playing Fannin, who, keep in mind, the Browns cut their starting slot receiver in Deontay Johnson right before the season started, and with their final 53 cuts, they let go of Johnson. Now they've got Jamari Thrash, a jabroni playing slot who does not merit routes and target participation. They've got a big-bodied yak mover in Harold Fannin. Mm-hmm. I think this guy's here to stay as long as Flacco's under center. And that's just, I want to keep driving that point home. He's not your solution for the full season. He's your solution right now when you need fantasy points. And because of that, I recommended 10 to 15%. We weren't going nuts. We weren't doing the 50% likely thing,
right? Which
likely playing on the most run-heavy Ravens offense was chasing fool's gold. We admitted this, and we knew this last year.
Yep.
We at FG just faded that entire concept. It's a far different situation in my eyes with Flacco under center and how high this team's going to pass. And it begins this week. They play the Ravens this week. They're going to be trailing. They're going to be throwing the ball quite a bit. I just think Fannin's a guy that's here to stay and a guy that arguably, if you punted the tight end position, guys like Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Kincaid, I think Fannin's a better start-sit play than many of those guys I just listed. So he's a guy that I'm buying. I think he's a strong click, a strong waiver addition, and a guy that I'll probably be playing in DFS this week too.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. A couple other questions to ask you before we talk some Thursday night football, Tyler. Where are we at with Jaylen Waddle? He's got the shoulder issue. It looks like he's going to play. The Dolphins offense in the second half was terrible. Looked awful in week 1. Waddle, I mean, statistically, he hasn't done anything in half a season. Like, he hasn't done anything. And there can still be the, Tyreek Hill's going to get suspended or go nuts, and now Waddle's getting 12 targets a week. That, okay. But where are we at right now with him? Shoulders beat up. Offense is messy. Is Waddle, who should be an auto wide receiver 3 start, is he that right now?
No, I think he's in that murky group. I mean, how do you have any confidence playing any Dolphins players after week 1? That was just a complete no-show. The worst possible outcome after what was a rough offseason of turmoil and bad news coming out of camp. Just, it's really tough to play him. And like, we could probably list 10 wide receivers going after him, where if you're stuck in an either-or situation, the probable answer is not Waddle. Like, man, I'm almost in wait-and-see mode with him. Tyreek, I think it's a different situation where you're willing to roll the dice a little bit more. I do remember that he had a big gain called back, which was a ticky-tacky one where had they thrown the challenge flag, there might have been a chance for another like 30 or so yards on Tyreek's bottom line. But Waddle, I just struggle.
What about Pittman? You mentioned Pittman, Freudian slip, because you knew we were going to talk about him next year.
Sorry.
Huge week 1. It was gold. Daniel Jones was being mentioned with Peyton Manning. It was gold in week 1. Here come the Broncos in week 2, and it ain't going to be gold in week 2. Is Pittman, in the words of Admiral Akbar from Star Wars, is it a trop this week with Pittman?
It is. Patrick Surtain is a shutdown corner, and they are going to have Pittman versus Surtain this entire game. We saw it happen with Ridley last week, where Ridley went under, 30 yards or something. It wasn't a great showing by Ridley, and I expect basically deja vu, where Pittman's going to be the guy that gets locked down by him, and we see Daniel Jones go elsewhere with his targets.
Yeah. So would you, if you had Pittman, is now the time to trade him? Is this as good as it's going to get, or is he a guy that's going to catch 5 or 6 passes all season long, provided Daniel Jones is the quarterback?
That's a fair question. I think Pittman's kind of a guy where you may have struck gold because he was going as like a wide receiver 5. Yeah, I think you found yourself a solid flex.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com, joins us every Thursday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. We always talk Thursday night football with him. Let's talk this matchup between the Commanders and the Packers. Start with the Commanders. The backfield. What's going on? Like, this has been, it was going to be Brian Robinson, then the trade to the Niners, and then it was JCM, and then we had 412 reports on Rodriguez, and Rodriguez wasn't even on the field last week. There's been speculation that maybe they did things differently last week because they're playing on a short week this week. How do you see the backfield with the Commanders presently?
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about them activating Chris Rodriguez, who, as far as like coach speak, the coaches said he had been stacking together great practices and looked great. His time will come. So is that this Thursday? We'll see. We'll see when we get the final inactives. My heart tells me no, we're probably not going to see him. This is a tough matchup on the ground, though. Green Bay's run defense held up extremely well last week against the Lions. They held the Gibbs and Montgomery duo to just 44 yards on 20 carries, so 2.2 yards per carry. And Washington rotated their backs last week. We saw a big 42-yard gain from Bill Krosky-Narrett. That boosted the bottom line of his fantasy total, but even if we take that out, he still averaged 4.7 yards per carry. He was looking good. I think it's just a matter of time until he and becomes fantasy reliable. At this time, I've got him on the bench on a few squads. Man, I can't muster the courage to start him on what I envision being trailing game script. I think the Packers win this one. So throw in Eckler's pass catching work, throw in the fact that Daniels is going to run the ball, Debo will run the ball. I think JCM is probably just more of a stash play at this juncture. But Eckler, man, this is a great spot for him pass catching wise. The Packers are super, super zone heavy, and we know that backs against zone almost double the target rate against man coverage. So it's setting up Eckler for a pretty good productive outing here. I think he's an interesting flex play against a defense that last year they gave it the 4th most receptions to the RB position. So I'm kind of playing like that. Eckler in the flex, JCM on the bench.
In the passing attack last week, Deebo Samuel showed up huge, 10 targets. He scored on the ground. Terry McLaurin was not in the box score. Now, there was a long pass down the left sideline that was, maybe 2 feet too long. Could have been a long touchdown from McLaurin. It would have looked differently. Some people were nervous with McLaurin because, he was off-season the contract. To me, it was a one-off, and I'm still looking at Terry McLaurin the same way. But, again, how are you looking at Deebo and Terry heading into this matchup? Because their performances last week might have been opposite what some people were expecting.
Yeah, my matchup analysis kind of dives into the weeds a bit too much. I'll be the first to admit it. And this is one where it really paints Deebo in a much better light than what we got for McLaurin. Okay. McLaurin to me was more of the sacrificial decoy playing the field stretching role. He had an 18.5-yard ADOT last week, which is pretty large for a wide receiver. And because of that, he was held to just catches of a 13-yard gain and a 14-yard gain. This defense, I talked about the Packers being zone heavy. They're also cover 2 heavy, which limits big explosive plays over the top. So I think it's going to be a tougher spot for McLaurin where we're going to need to see Jaden Daniels really thread the needle to get some of these big gains for McLaurin, making it more of a volatile wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. Deebo on paper just looks a little bit better. 10 targets last week, like you mentioned, 7 for 77 yards, also ran in that score. The Packers were bottom 10 in fantasy points per game to the perimeter, so another notch against McLaurin, but they were kind of more middle of the pack against slot receivers. So Deebo's the guy that I would kind of prefer to target if I'm choosing between the wide receivers, like in a DFS showdown slate. Deebo would be the guy that I would choose. We also have some rushing capital there, some equity where we might be able to get lucky with a score.
Packers side of things. Let's talk about the fun receiving core. I think that Jordan Love completed 16 passes last week and 10 people caught passes, which might be great football, but it's horrible fantasy stuff. The receiver, Reed had 5 targets, Dobbs had 4, Wicks and Golden had 2, Williams had 1. Break it down for us. Maybe there's some obvious matchup thing here that you've been able to find in the matchup with the Commanders. But last week, unfortunately, with this receiving core was kind of what we expected, and the result was a mess.
Yeah, the Packers played out of 11 personnel at the 3rd lowest rate last week. So 11 personnel being 3 wide receiver sets. That means we saw a lot of 2 tight end sets, and we saw a lot of 2 running back sets. They were both top 5 in 12 personnel and 21 personnel. So assuming that wasn't just a byproduct of playing the Lions, I think that's just going to lead to limited opportunities across the board for all these wideouts. Not a single wide receiver cleared a 70% route participation mark last week. Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, all of these guys are on the early injury report to begin the week. They're all expected to play, but I expect them all to kind of labor through the game as well. Add in the fact that Romeo Dobbs makes it just a super, super deep group.
I guess Dobbs was the only player that played 50% of the snaps at the wide receiver position too. Like this, They weren't. I mean, like you're talking about, it was just there's a plan. I'm not saying, but how do you discern it? Like what's going on?
The coaches said they've got a lot of options and they want to keep everybody involved. So it's going to, in my eyes, continue to be a rotation with Dobbs being like the only redraft player I'd consider, more of like a flex, a wide receiver 4 flex. Mm-hmm. I like him against what should be a man defense. These Commanders to close the year, they shifted to super man heavy with a lot of single high. Reed is probably a better DFS play if you're trying to chase that touchdown option. But I'm anticipating Green Bay to win and play from ahead. So the overall pass volume here for Green Bay is probably going to be pretty sparse. Tucker Kraft quietly led the group in routes last week. He's the guy that I am pointing to as the sneaky play. Okay. I liked the matchup last week for Theo Johnson, the Giants tight end, against an ancient Bobby Wagner in man coverage. Unfortunately, it was Wan'Dale Robinson that got all those targets. Theo wasn't super involved, but I'm copy pasting that analysis and I'm just swapping it over to Tucker Kraft, who I think can be a guy that they get in space, let that yak skill set shine, and hopefully reach the paint again like he did last week. So Kraft would be the guy that I think benefits the most from the matchup.
Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. You normally have a bet. I didn't ask you before the show. Do you have a bet you're willing to share? Because we have a whole package of this over at fantasyguru.com. If you want, click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. But do you have one, Tyler?
Yes. My favorite bet is something that the line has moved too far where I can't even recommend it in good conscience right now. Good faith. So I will not say that, but I will say it's another reason to get in early because lines move quickly, especially for these Thursday night football games. The play that I like the most is actually Jaden Daniels for an anytime touchdown. Excuse me, one second.
Yep. Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com, with us every Thursday at about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And you can obviously, again, catch them all over the place at fantasyguru.com. Go ahead, Tyler.
Sorry, I'm still getting over that COVID cough. Daniels takes on a very zone-heavy scheme here from Washington. From Green Bay. This is a team that sends 4. They don't blitz. They were 31st in blitz rate last week. Yet they're still able to rush with the 4. So that's pretty notable that that's how they attack. Because most of these guys are just going to sit back in coverage and just kind of watch Daniels. So I'm kind of hesitant to really go heavily on rushing props. But we do know a guy like Micah Parsons is one that will be overly aggressive, and that over-aggression on the outside namely creates some rushing lanes for a dual threat like Daniels. We throw in their cover 2 heavy rate. This is a team that generally wants to limit explosive plays. I think there's just going to be a chance where we see fewer men in the box and some escape opportunities for Daniels, especially near the goal line. So I'm hoping we see some hero ball from the reigning offensive rookie of the year. That's my favorite bet right now.
Tyler Buecher every Thursday joins us to talk Thursday night football, kind of news and notes, and we'll take some questions if you have those. And there are a few here, Tyler, so let's jump in there. Quarterback position, Jordan Love, Mr. Herbert, or Mr. Nix? You just spoke about Love, and doesn't sound like you expect there to be a lot of volume there from a passing perspective. So I'm assuming you're going to say Herbert or Nix is the better option this week. Tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Correct. I think Justin Herbert's in line for a fantastic outing. Once again, we saw week 1, this team was extremely pass heavy. Loved to see it after all the offseason talk of this team being more run oriented. If this is here to stay, man, I was looking at Herbert MVP tickets. They're 15-1. It wasn't good enough for me to pull the trigger, but had it been 20-1, I would have dabbled a little bit. But I do think it's a great spot for him against the Raiders. I think Herbert and company on Monday Night Football, man, they light it up once again.
John G's got the following question about the wide receiver spot. He's got Christian Kirk right now. He's asking, should he drop Christian Kirk to pick up Chris Olave? Because for some reason, someone dropped Olave after 13 targets. That's very weird. But yeah, I don't quite get that. But are we moving from the injured Kirk to the always injured Olave? What do you think?
It
seems
seems
call,
like musical
right?
chairs.
Yeah.
But I can't say no to 13 targets. And I can't get the week 1 outing by the Houston Texans offense out of my mind. I have a lot of Nico Collins, and I am very nervous after seeing how poor that line performed against the Rams. Man, I knew it would impact the run game. I was hoping it wouldn't impact the pass game to that degree. Let's see how that goes in week 2. That's a big thing to watch. So for that reason, thinking the Texans might have some struggles on the offensive line all season long, I'm going to go with Olave. I just think he's a guy that you'd rather invest in, knowing when he's out there, Rattler's going to be slinging it. They're going to be trailing. 13 targets is not anything to scoff at. That's a huge amount of volume. Go get the guy with the volume, Chris Olave.
Hal's got a question about the backfield. He's asking us our thoughts about LaQuinn Allen. Things drastically changing for, obviously, the Jaguars. They traded away Bigsby. Tootin is now the 2. Allen is now the 3. Allen's not usable in any format. But an injury to Etienne or Tootin, and all of a sudden we're starting to get interested in the Liam Cohen offense there. So under what scenario, I guess, are we adding Allen? Because, again, right now there's nothing to see, unless you're seeing something I'm not seeing.
Yeah, in deeper formats, maybe like 16-team leagues or maybe some dynasty leagues he may have been out there just kind of hanging out on the waiver wire. This guy, this last year at Syracuse, 60-plus catches. I think he's going to be – that's where he makes his mark as a pass-catching, third down, change-of-pace option. But, man, Tootin's really the guy you want to target there. But LaQuinn Allen in deeper formats, I don't mind the dart throw. This is still, like I said, a Liam Cohen offense that should be exciting.
Yep. Paul says, morning, guys. Got a question about Kenneth Walker. Obviously, there's a lot of Kenneth Walker love at FG before the season began. Week 1 didn't go the way anyone anticipated. There's now we're all trying to figure out why, right? Is it the coaches saw something that we didn't think? Is it, as Paul brings up, is this concern about Walker's health? There were some people that thought maybe the coaching staff chose to do things the way they did in week 1 because they wanted to make sure Walker was healthy after dealing with injuries. Bottom line is, what are we doing with Charb and Walker? What are your thoughts moving forward? How big is week 2 to that answer?
Yeah, I talked about this on our Tuesday roster coach live stream. If you look at the game and actually watch the drives, we saw them going tit for tat in the first half. So the first drive, we saw Kenneth Walker, 4 plays, and then they punted. The next drive, it was 10 plays with Charbonnet and a touchdown. So that's a lot more of on-the-field activity for him. The next drive, 3 and out with Walker. The next drive, 3 and out with Walker. The next drive, 8 plays and a field goal with Charbonnet. So in total, we're looking at 10 plays versus 18 plays with a lot more opportunity for Charbonnet in the first half. Should they continue this drive for drive thing, natural variance is going to swing back into Walker's way and path where he's able to get more on the field opportunity and more touches. I will say he was dead last in rush yards over expectation, which is not a good sign for a guy like that. But that's not super surprising. He's always been a boomer bust rusher. He's always looking for that big explosive run. Right. And I'm okay with that when a guy gets volume. If he gets enough touches, eventually one of those is probably going to go for a big game, especially with this offensive line and this outside zone blocking scheme. Unfortunately, we're looking at more of what was, I think a lot of us thought 60-40, 65-35, and it was truly 50-50 to begin the week. If that's here to stay, I think we all overdrafted Walker. If we get back to that rotation of 60-40 with Walker seeing more opportunities in the first half specifically, and they do that drive for drive thing, I think Walker will rebound here in the near future. So that's the big thing I'm looking forward into week 2 is, do they go drive for drive?
Eric I's got the following question. Someone dropped Ramondre Stevenson. Interestingly, the Patriots last week, I think they had, 46 passes from May 2. And then as soon as the game was over, their head coach, Mike Vrabel, comes out and says, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to balance our offense out. The backfield is basically split between Stevenson and Henderson. I don't think that's a surprise for a guy in his first NFL game. I don't think it would be a surprise if Henderson started to take over the backfield a little bit more. It's not like Stevenson did anything in week 1. He didn't do a hell of a lot in the second half last season. So Eric asked the question. Stevenson was dropped. Eric would have to drop either Roschon Johnson or Tank Bigsby. Would you drop either Bigsby or Johnson, given that he also has Swift, and we're unclear who the real backup is there with the Bears? We just don't know for sure. Do we drop Bigsby if we don't have, Barkley because to add Stevenson, or is Stevenson even on your radar at this point?
No, he's not. I think Stevenson's dookie. He's just not a player that I'm really interested in ever putting into a starting lineup. And whenever I have that feeling, I'm never going to roster that player. To me, it's just a roster clogger. Guy that averages under 3 yards per carry, fumble prone. I think it's just a matter of time until Henderson wins that position outright. Stevenson to me is just more of a guy that if you want 4 points, you want 4 fantasy points, go for it. I want more than 4. I'm not rostering Ramondre. I think dropping him is actually a smart idea.
Ethan needs help to make a smart decision here. He needs 2 guys, and the answer to this question is yes for 3 of them. Pittman's out this week because of the matchup we talked about earlier with the Broncos and Surtain. So we've got Garrett Wilson, Chuba Hubbard, and Mr. Swift. I think all 3 of those guys start every week, no matter what. These questions are very difficult. People in small leagues, people do a good job drafting, trading. So Pittman's out. So who are we doing here, Tyler? Is it Swift, Hubbard, Wilson? Is it one of the running backs to get some touches? Is it both the running backs? Garrett Wilson and Fields looked pretty good last week in a tough matchup.
True. And I think they've got another exciting matchup here against the Buffalo Bills. A lot of cornerbacks that are banged up in Buffalo, which is why the Ravens were able to get some big chunk gains through Zay Flowers. Cut and paste. Garrett Wilson's out there putting up big gains against this Buffalo secondary. It looks to be trailing game scripts. So Garrett Wilson's my starter. Going to add DeAndre Swift as well to this matchup here. Bears, I mean, I like the usage we got from Swift last week. And what was great about Chicago was they only had 2 active backs on Monday Night Football. They had Swift and Monongai. It's really narrow in terms of where the touches and volume is going to go. So I'm going to lean with Swift here in a rebound game, who got some good usage. I liked his pass catching ability. And I liked what we saw rushing wise. He was getting some angry runs out there. So I liked what we saw from Swift. Those are going to be my answers, Wilson and Swift.
Timon asks, there's 2-part question here, but it says, if I make this move, I'd be starting Pacheco in the flex. I don't like that. So let's hope the trade is a great one, because I don't want to end up starting Pacheco right now in my flex. I don't like the trade either. We're talking about, do we trade DJ Moore for Rashee Rice? That gets us now a running back and a wide receiver of the Chiefs. So I know it's the Chiefs, but that's not ideal to have teammates there. The Rice thing, I think, comes up a lot. It's interesting because he's suspended. He's missing a month. And we haven't started bye weeks yet. Injuries just starting. Making a move to add Rice if you don't have an injured list spot is just so difficult. I can't trade DJ Moore, even if DJ Moore is wide receiver 25 instead of wide receiver 12. I can't trade that and go with zeros on my bench for a month plus here. I just can't do it. What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, throw in the mix that you've got Godwin here, who's already a guy we're not expecting until week 5. So, yeah, I think this is not a roster where this transaction makes sense. I would hold DJ Moore.
Final question here from Rod. Another one of these difficult ones. We got Kayshon Boutte, who's actually gone for 100 yards in 2 straight games now. He had a big week 1. Tillman, who's trending up with Flacco and that Browns offense that we talked about. Jacoby Myers, just doing Jacoby Myers things. Charbonnet and Walker, who we just discussed, and you broke down the backfield and what we saw last week. We need 2 guys, Walker, Charbonnet, Myers, Tillman, and Boutte in a half-point PPR.
Can you stall for 1 minute?
I can absolutely.
I know who Seattle
plays.
plays.
And again, I know why people ask these questions and everything, but this also, for those of you asking questions in Discord, this is why, try if you can to limit your questions. There are some people that legitimately send me questions every single day in Discord.
Yeah.
It gets tough, because it's not like the answer to these questions comes in 3 seconds. You have to do a little bit of research, right? You have to do a little bit of digging. And so you might think, oh, this is a really easy question. It's not an easy question. So try to be judicious with how you ask questions in Discord versus just firing, 5. So we had to use yesterday, sent me 5 questions. It's getting a little, so anyway, we got Walker, Charbonnet, Myers, Tillman, and Boutte. Half-point PPR. We need 2 of them. Do you have an obvious answer?
Yeah, I like Tillman quite a bit. Like I said, I think you just want to invest in this Flacco offense. We saw him put up a lot of production on the outside last week against the Bengals. I expect the Ravens to be playing from ahead, forcing the Browns to throw a lot. So Tillman will be one of my answers. I'm also going to go with Walker. I'm willing to buy that rebound. They play the Steelers this week, who have they gave up a ton of explosive gains on the ground, which is exactly what we're looking for Walker. Throw in the pass catching element. I think Walker is in the line for a rebound. I really like him for DFS tournaments this week with everybody off him, but I think he's even a good start set format play too. So I'd be going with Walker and Tillman here.
I think Jeff Manns yesterday on the show said that the Steelers were either first or second in the league in missed tackles in week 1. Like, it was a totally abnormal effort. You wouldn't expect that from that group. So that plays into things a little bit here with those backs as well against them this week. He's Tyler Buecher, fantasyguru.com. Thanks for all the comments and questions. To get any other questions or comments that you have answered, Send a note to either one, Tyler or myself, or anyone on the crew over at fantasyguru.com in the Discord. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner of the page. You can get signed up for the football package, whether it's seasonal or DFS or wagering. Maybe you can get all three of them. Maybe you only get two of the three. Send a note to support at fantasyguru.com if you've got any questions. Tyler mentioned earlier he's on the live stream on Tuesday nights. He's on the live stream on Friday nights talking DFS. He's with us every Thursday. He's writing articles all the time. Give us the update on your articles that haven't been posted yet, as well, so the folks know what they have to look forward to the rest of the week, Tyler.
Sure. Today I've got my DFS wide receiver coach, which will be coming out this afternoon. Basically going through the slate, looking at which wide receivers I find are good for good volume and good pricing. Friday, I've got a little bit of a blank day where I'm able to work on my game script article, which comes out Saturday, which is, oh my God, I think there was 12,000 words last week. I need to find a way to trim that down because I don't know who's reading all 12,000. Shout out to everyone who does. I appreciate you all immensely. And then Sunday, we've got our start sits in our Discord channel. So throw on the Friday video show. I forgot to talk about that. Plenty of stuff coming up here over at Fantasy Guru.
My Wednesday article that just went up too, that's usually about 12,000 words too, Tyler, and I don't know who reads it either. So, I'm just
we appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'm throwing the basic information out, and for those of you that really want to get there, get the nitty gritty, proceed on to Tyler's work with his great article that comes out here, as you know, on Friday. Tyler Buecher of fantasyguru.com joins us every Thursday about 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. Tyler, thanks for your time today. Glad you're feeling better. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Ray.
You got it. Go to fantasyguru.com. Click that subscribe tab in the top right corner. Let us help you out in 2025 for any fantasy sports. We talk a lot about football, but we cover all these other sports too. NASCAR, PGA, MMA, basketball, hockey, baseball, golf,
college
horse
football.
Racing. Yeah, exactly. We got a lot of stuff over there. So click that subscribe tab and join the largest active community in fantasy sports. For Tyler Buecher, I'm Ray Flowers. We'll be back at 12 o'clock Eastern Time tomorrow on Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by fantasyguru.com.